Action.
All right, so we're going to be trimming this bowl, and we're going to have to do a couple of things with this before we begin to trim. So yes, you need to get to know your piece. So you need to hold the piece in your hands, and I want you to feel the walls of the clay from the bottom all the way up to the top. Once you do that, I want you to feel the weight of your piece. You're going to try to get rid of a lot of this weight off of this bowl. So the first thing I'm going to do to get started is, did you take one of my lids? First thing I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to test the depth of the floor of my clay. This is going to help me to make sure that I'm not going to trim through my piece. So I'm going to take a needle tool, I'm going to put a little ball of clay on the end. I'm going to take that ball of clay directly from the center, I'm going to stick it all the way down to the wheel head. When I pull that up, I can see the depth of my piece, so I can see how much I'll be able to take away. This I'm going to leave off to the side for now. I do not need that for a little while. Make sure you fill in your hole every time. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find out the placement of where my foot is going to be. So I'm going to find out the outside edge of my foot and the inside edge of my foot. Some of you have a tendency to make your feet a bit too wide, so we're going to find out the proper placement for the outside edge of your foot. So the first thing you need to do is you need to look to the inside of your piece. You want to find the floor of your clay, which is the flat area, and then right where it starts to curve up the side, you're going to take your needle tool and you're going to press your needle tool straight down onto your wheel head. You guys can all see that placement. So from where the floor of the clay hits right to where it starts to curve up. So when I stick that all the way down and I flip it over, I'm just going to put a little mark right there. That is where the outside edge of my foot is going to be. So I'm going to be taking all of this clay away. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the inside edge of my foot. So I'm going to take my needle tool again. I'm just going to stick it into the center of my clay. It's going to sit there for a minute. Then I'm going to use my calipers. You're going to take your calipers and you're going to touch one end of your calipers onto your needle tool, and you're going to move the other end of your calipers to the outside edge of your clay. So that is the width right there that I'm going to be keeping. Notice that my calipers are crossing in a section. You're going to need to use that cross mark in just a moment. So now it's time to flip our clay over. I'm going to find that needle hole where I just pressed it through, and I'm going to take the cross section of my calipers. It's kind of got a little bit too wide here. I'm going to lay it right to the inside, so that's a little bit too thin. So when I touch it, sorry, my calipers moved a little bit. That is going to be the inside wall of my foot, a nice narrow foot there. Does that make sense to everybody? Everyone's okay with that? Okay, great. Make sure you get yourself a pair of calipers that doesn't wiggle and stays nice and tight so you don't have that I just had. Okay, so that's going to be the inside wall there. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get on center. Use the concentric circles on the wheel first. So lean your head directly over top, find the circles, and then you can start your centering. So grab your needle tool right in front of your stomach, slowly move it outward until it starts to scratch. Okay. So my scratches started here and they ended right here. So there's a blank spot right here. So I want to push my clay slowly and carefully, just a nudge, towards that blank spot. You want to push away from your scratch lines because your scratch lines are the areas that are closest to you. Let me try again. Okay, I have a little blank spot here. It's getting smaller. Make sure you smooth off your scratches each time, that way you're not getting confused about what you scratched and what you hadn't. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm going to test at the top. All right, great. So I'm on center at this point, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make two concentric circles. One where my outside foot is going to be placed and one where the inside of my foot is going to be placed. So I'm going to take my needle tool, I'm going to stick it right on my outside line first, and the one on my inside line. I'm just going to double check those circles. It should be even in between the circles on all sides. All right. So now I'm ready to go ahead and start to put on my lugs. Your lugs should be 3 lugs. They shouldn't be too wet. If they're too wet, they're gonna stick, and they should be placed evenly around your piece. Hold your piece down, squish your lugs to the wheel head first. That way you will stop from hitting your lip, and then squish it against the side. Think about this like a tripod. So you want to have 3 even lugs. Okay, so that should be pretty stuck on there. Now I'm going to use my large loop tool first. I'm going to be holding it on an angle. You want to have part of your hand on top. You want to have your thumb crossing over your right hand. You're going to hold your loop tool at the 3 o'clock position. You're going to take your clay on that angle all the way to your line, to the outside of your line. Okay, that is the width of my foot. Now I have all this extra clay here, so I want to smooth that out. So I'm just going to hold my loop tool and I'm going to slowly run it down the side walls of my clay. The clay should come off like ribbons. Some of you are having a problem where you're trying to trim when your clay is too wet. If you do that, you get a lot of drag and you might cut through your piece. And some of you are trying to trim when your clay is too dry, and therefore you're not able to take off enough. So make sure your piece is at the leather hard state. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my inside indentation. So you can use the pointed end of a loop tool. I have a squared end, so I'm just going to hold it on an angle. And I'm going to start to make an indentation for the depth of my foot. Now, this is when I come back to my needle tool here. I can test to see how much clay I can take away. Take away a little bit more. So now I can measure that. And that's pretty good. I only want to take away about half of this. So I want to have about 1/4 of an inch of a base. So that's a pretty good depth there for me. And I'm holding my loop tool on an angle, so it's actually going to give me a nice beveled edge for my foot. So it's kind of going in on an angle, it's not staying straight. So now I'm going to hold my loop tool in the center and I'm going to slowly move my hand out to the 3 o'clock position to take away this excess clay. I'm going to go down to that depth that I already cut into. I'm just going to even it out a little. Alright. So let me just flatten off the top here. I want this to sit nice and flat so it sits flat on the table, so I'm going to hold a flat tool against the top. Now, I can do a lot of things with this foot. My foot can stay just like this. It can sit on the table just fine. If I want the outside of the foot to be a little more prominent, I can start to take away some of the clay on the outside. So I can make it straight, I can make it angle in, I could make it angle out. It's all depending on how you hold your loop tool. I'm going to make mine straight. So I'm going to hold the straight end of my square loop tool on the outside edge. Just going to take away some of that clay. I'm going to switch back to my large tool. Hold it from the point here. And I'm just going to rotate my wrist and round that off. Straighten up the wall. Flatten off the top. And then I like to move to my rubber rib because this gives it a little bit of a burnishing. So just help to smooth. I'm just going to hold my rubber rib, run it down the side wall of my clay. It's going to stay nice and smooth. I can do that across the top. I can flip to the flat side and hold that on the inside of my piece. Use my finger to smooth it a little. Okay. Put your initials in the bottom. Take away your lugs, then pick it up, and you might not be done here. You might have to go back into it. warped a little. So I'm going to straighten that back out. So it should be nice and light. You should have a nice even foot across the bottom, and it should sit nice and even on a flat surface. Okay, let's use that.
Written, produced, and directed by Gemma Hollister.